You are listening to Bits of Signum Creator Stories podcast. I'm your host, Angela Dalton, CEO and founder of Signum Growth. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bits of Signum Creator Stories. Today, we are so excited. Eliza Yapanen is here with me, and our partner here. We've gotten to know Michelle Goad, our guest, over many conversations, and every time we speak to Michelle, we basically want to speak to Michelle again. And one of our themes at Signum Growth is merge onto the highway of behavior that is already happening. And when we spoke to Michelle, we felt such a strong connection because it seems like you have this uncanny ability to recognize behavior and behavior change very early, and then untangle that and figure it out, and then figure out how to make money around it. That's my summary, but you have an illustrious background. So I would love for you to kind of kick it off for our listeners and go through your background.
Sure. And I love, that's a diplomatic way of describing exactly my career of finding, I call it seeking out consumer behavior and attention, capturing it and commercializing it, right? And I think when I look back over the 20 years I've been at it, that is the main theme for me. So when I started my career, attention in my world was in the fashion space. And so I wanted to go build brands that were noisy, right? And were doing things that weren't supposed to be done. And so I joined Barney's and helped build their footwear business. It was one of the biggest businesses in the world at the time. And we made a lot of noise there. And then I was obsessed in watching Marc Jacobs, like every good female fashion obsessive at the time. And he was just making a lot of noise. And I was like, oh, how do you build a brand like that? It was flying off the shelves, right? And so joined him and led merchandising and marketing for the collection business when he was creative director of Louis Vuitton. And, so many lessons from that of just like, take things that are naughty and make some noise with it. It was such a fun job. And then, of course, the iPhone came out during that time. And I just fell in love, and I was like, okay, this is going to be the next big thing. I can't imagine a world in which you're not just using your phone instead of, schlepping, God knows what we were using at the time, Blackberries, I guess. And so started to see really early on a shift in behavior and the shopping side of, okay, consumers want to the ease of messaging people and the high touch one-to-one experience, but they don't want to sort of like DIY shop and go in store. They don't always have time to do that. And so we built an app that did that, and we ended up pioneering conversational commerce and social commerce. We started that journey in 2012, so same year that WeChat was being built, so very early in this space. The company was called PS Step, which I co-founded and ran as CEO for 6.5 years. Was bought out of that business by Nike. And really that was, the alignment there was Nike was announcing they were going D2C, and our whole business was that, right? It was building direct to consumer relationships with customers at scale using tech. And then also really building off the backs of social and creators. Like what were people wearing? What was interesting to women? And it was all influencers and creators. And none of the brands were talking about it. So all these things were interesting to Nike. So moved here to Portland, led really digital transformation at both retail and digital. And that was cool because we were shipping the Nike app and overhauling the, Nike.com. And this is a brand, it is the largest brand in the world. Like the scale is insane. I learned a ton. And then I joined the president of innovation at Nike and led all Gen Z innovation for the brand. And this is when I think when you leave and stop being an entrepreneur and you go back and you have to figure out who you are in the next chapter, this was the job that did that for me. So I was watching Shein and TikTok like everybody else was for years. And they built their businesses off the backs of teen girls, but nobody talked about teen girls at that time. They weren't, zero earnings calls where like teen girls are going to be our growth play. Like that just wasn't a thing. And I just was like, wow, this is a customer hiding in plain sight. Nobody talks about this person. And look at these huge behemoth businesses they're building. And so really rebuilt that strategy and helped shepherd, how we did creator influencer, how we did social commerce, how we built participatory commerce through Nike. Then just really stepped back and said, okay, this is where the attention is, right? How do you use that for other partners and brands And really it came down to social first brand building and content on social being the lever there. And so I joined the Turning Group as an operating partner who that's their whole thesis, right? Is content to commerce, super aligned in the way that I saw the world as an operator and how they were investing, worked with all of their portcos to really help them, if they were a media brand, help them, accelerate commerce or get in the game on the creator and influencer space, right? And so did a lot of work on that side. And then I started to think about, okay, well, who else, where else, what's the attention, where is it moving to? And so I ended up formalizing my company, which is called Greatest of All Digital, which is a consultancy and studio to do that for brands and businesses. Where's the attention? How do we help people grow by partnering and scaling through this sort of social first brand building lens?
It's really interesting because you were so early in this conversational commerce meets socials. I think the way you just said it. So,
yes.
Can you go back to that? It's interesting to me too, because I have a 12-year-old daughter who
perfect.
Spends all of her time and all of my money on products at Sephora. I think that she found
I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm behind that. I'm so sorry. I'm totally behind that.
Gosh, she was in the womb when Michelle was devising her plan.
It's all by design. I'm so sorry.
But can you just talk about PS Department? I mean, how did you recognize that so early and then getting 150 brands to adopt it? I think, did they adopt it after they saw, wait a second, social is a thing here and we're going to miss it?
Oh my God.
How did that all unfold?
I mean, it was really unsexy and not the greatest story, but it was a lot of influencing and hard work, and really twofold, I will say, two tactics that we used that were really effective. One was the way the platform worked. Consumers would come in and they would either know exactly what they wanted, like, hey, I saw this cool thing on Instagram. What is it? Can I get it? And so we would use that demand signal to go back to the brands. And my cheat code was that I was a former buyer at one of the most prestigious places in the world. So I did know a lot of people in the industry. So I could get us in the door and it'd be like, hey, look, we have tons of customers asking for this thing. Do you guys want to be at the top of the stack, right? When we go to source and fulfill this. And that's how we built a lot of the relationships. So that was the bottoms up method. I would say the early adopters on the brand side, they're just people in brands that are okay with trying things. And they're not necessarily the ones who are going to tip you over and get all of the deals, but there's enough of them to where you have a story to tell, right, for your other partners. And so it was a combination. Anytime I went in and it was like, fresh pitch, most of the people are like, what's an app, right? We're starting at such a rudimentary, because it was so early, right? That wasn't even on their radar. And candidly, it just wasn't in their industry, right? They're not tech companies. And so they weren't really paying attention to the space. And so many of those, it was years and years of cultivating relationships. But I think that combination and the consumers we were serving, by the way, were truly like the tippy top of the pyramid. So when you go in with, hey, so-and-so wants this, our customers were also telling the brands directly, why aren't you working with these people? They're amazing. Like, this service is unbelievable. I think you get all this noise happening, this groundswell, and that's how we got them on board. We ended up having 153 different retail and brand partners. And these were like LVMH, Kering. They were not, it was everybody that our clients wanted, with about 1.5 million products in our database in order to service. So it was an undertaking. Building marketplaces is not for the faint of heart. I will just leave it at that. Like, it's not easy.
Was the head of digital within brands a big role? When did that really take off as a role? Because now it's a very prestigious role.
Right. It was still a stepchild at that point. And it's funny, that's a great question, because I think few people really can kind of remember that time, right? When I was a buyer at Barney's, and this was, 2006, if you were on the e-com team, you were considered like lesser. Like, it was a very nascent, nobody wanted to be on the team role. And I split my time between, as a buyer, was doing it for all of the channels. We all did. And so that's sort of where I got the taste of it. But even up until probably 15, there weren't heads of digital. Like we were pitching into the CEO because it was seen as a brand specific experience, right? We're putting their brand online. So you're talking about, okay, we're opening distribution. Like that's how they thought about these things. And then we also had to get digital distribution and retail distribution because we were serving the whole marketplace. So it was a super complex deal structure. It was not fun. like not fun.
Yeah. So Angie and I, as Angie mentioned earlier, we really have bonded with you over so many things. But one of the things, obviously, we've bonded most over is Roblox and the UGC space. Can you tell us, because you are one of the people who are pioneering this sort of brand tie-ins in here. What's it like now in this field? What are your experiences and what are you doing?
Yeah. So Roblox came onto my radar because of the deep work. Again, it's like Teen Girls basically taught me how to do my second chapter of my career. So that's where it came onto my radar. Again, no one was really talking about this. This is several years ago now. And a few behaviors started to pop up for me in the form of self-expression. And I think that's also a through line when you think about, well, what is fashion? It is that, right? What is being a creator influencer? It is self-expression. And I started to see this, oh, wow, they aren't necessarily wanting to flex like, millennials did on Instagram and maybe not even TikTok. They're flexing through their avatars on Roblox. That's really interesting, right? And that's what started to get me excited about this space. And then I started to track, okay, well, where are they spending time? How are they spending time? And I was talking, this is specific to tweens now. This is a pretty young, younger than the social, I would say, typical customer, but they were going on Roblox after school and that's where they were hanging out. And I'm like, wow, this feels like a attention opportunity, right? Like they're like, who's talking about this? And so I started to peel back the onion. And the irony of this space that I found, and I'm curious what you kind of have seen yourselves, is that there's so many parallels to the influencer creator genre of the 2012s to this sort of gaming digital Roblox journey that we're on, because it's all Wild West, right? Like you want to look at the infrastructure. It's really, there's nothing there. There's a handful of agencies that are helping brands build their own branded experiences. But if there's anything that I learned in the influencer creator space, and I still shepherd this to today, it's not about you, the logo, going and setting up the handle, right? And in Roblox's case, it's setting up the experience. It's about meeting the consumer where they already are and finding those like really authentic brand integrations. And that's the work that we're doing with Roblox specifically. So I'm almost like the counter position to a lot of the narrative that's been happening, but I genuinely believe, when you think about the power of some of these games and the reach and scale they've already achieved, how are you going to replicate that as a manufacturer, right? Like it's just really hard. And it's just, I don't know, it doesn't feel as organic as like, let's show up in some of these spaces they're already in and surprise and delight them. And I don't know, you just feel in the know and seen, and it's top of mind, right, for the consumer. So that's sort of the position that I'm strongly advocating for brands to jump in if they're going to test.
Well, what's interesting in what you bring up is one, that is definitely what we've heard echoed by our Roblox creators who have been here on our creator stories.
Oh, amazing.
They've definitely all said that building for Roblox, you can't come in with, I'm a game developer, I know what I'm doing, which is very much what happened with YouTube, right? Like we can make a TV show on YouTube and then it just bombs because that's not the format, right? And that's not the culture and that's not what's happening. And it's very much the similar thing that we've heard echo, across the board, that no, you're gonna tank if you go in with that mentality. You got to go in and you got to go native and figure out like who is the crowd, who are the creators, what's their voice. And I still think like with YouTube, that was an iteration that took a long time to find what is YouTube. I still feel like we're in a space where we're finding out what is Roblox. But on that front, what the commerce side is a huge aspect to this. And I want to now jump into Walmart and Roblox, you know, commerce little pilot that they did in May. And the story is they did a little pilot with Walmart where the kids could, you know, do like play in a digital twin of Walmart, like a kind of a storefront, and they could, I guess, buy, you know, an item and it would immediately be shipped, you know, straight to their home, which was the Walmart item. Now they've concluded that pilot, but they're actually doing a new drop this summer. But this time they've iterated it so that it's all under $1. I mean, under $10.
Okay.
And the items all are branded with a Roblox creator. So it's like a co-created piece.
Got it.
So what is your take on this, you know, Roblox pilot, this brand engagement? What do you see here? And what's your takeaways?
This is such a hot topic for me because it really pulls at the sort of counter position, I guess, that I mentioned earlier in one, first of all, kudos to the team at Walmart for getting that shipped. Like this stuff is not easy to get over the line. It's expensive and it is a test. So one, I know how very difficult that is to do. And it's impressive for the scale that they're operating at to do that. So one. Two, I think likely what they saw was, you know, limited traction, right, in that first test in terms of commerce. And why is that? It's just new, right? It's a new behavior that both Roblox and Walmart are introducing. Does this consumer actually want those goods? What's the price point? It sounds like they've kind of double clicked on that. And by the way, same happened on Instagram and TikTok as well. Everyone goes through that, like what's actually going to sell here? I think what's ironic about where they're landing is that they're leaning on the native creators to make it work. And it's just like all roads lead to that being the solution. It's like you can't fight it. And I genuinely believe, and I don't know, you know, this might be bold to say, but when you think about where the attention is, who we're all watching on social, on Roblox, et cetera, the just power dynamics have shifted, right? And so if you want to be successful in these environments, I really think about these voices as the new storefront, right? And so building that army and that arsenal of storefronts, whether that's a game developer or a creator, he who has those relationships, I genuinely believe wins the market. And so I'm not shocked to hear that they're partnering with them. I would almost think they'd be better off structuring deals directly with the games and being their commerce partner. So almost thinking of the Roblox games as media and Walmart as the commerce fulfillment. Get in there early and do those deals, right? Who else is going to do it? And now you have this great flow, right? So I don't know. I don't see much downside in doing that.
It's interesting because I thought about this, something similar. I mean, again, we keep going back to this merge onto the highway of behavior that's happening, or like, you know, as you said, go where the audience is. And we already know that Roblox is garnering just a massive engagement numbers. We've seen 156 minutes, 2.8 times TikTok, you know, and these platforms are difficult to figure out for the incumbents, whether that's incumbent brands, incumbent game developers. This is something completely new. And people want to fight it and come in with their way. They can't help themselves. And you know, it's just so interesting what you said, Eliza, about like they dropped it to below $10. I mean, I agree with you. There's a little downside because they're learning so much.
Yeah.
But we also can learn so much about what they're learning. And we also probably, you know, well, I won't say that. I was going to say something like that would sound very much like we know what we're doing here. And they don't. Because it just blows me away that we think we can change 77 million daily active users' behavior to do something different, like the old way.
Yeah, no, exactly. The funny thing is like, no, do it traditionally, the way your parents would want you to.
Oh, yeah. It's true. It's so true. Oh, my gosh. The number of battles, and I still fight these, by the way, the number of battles with brands that I have where they will still be operating in a TV print world, right? When it comes to even just creative, like let's just even go that basic, just creative. They operate and optimize for a TV and print world, and then they shove it into the social platforms, and they're like, why isn't this working? And you're like, look at it, it's just you're in the flow. It just doesn't work, right? It just that's not what we want to look at. And the same exact methodology, I think, can be applied to gaming, right? It's like, let's take the widget that we know how to do, and like, we want to be the landowners, but you're not good at it here. You know, that's not what the people want. Maybe I think there will be outliers. There always will be. And there's some amazing brands that crush it on social, right? And they get really good at it. But the vast majority have struggled, even just on social. And then you apply that to gaming and you're like, wow, this is beyond just new muscle. Like, this is a completely separate capability that you're just better off partnering than trying to build yourself, right? Like, I don't know.
I have to say, I have to bring out a brand example on socials that is just kind of hopped into my view recently. And it's not Roblox related, but there's this sparkling water called Liquid Death.
Oh, absolutely. They're amazing.
And
amazing.
Their social media campaigns are mind-blowing because they've made original music, which are based off of the comments that people are like, this sucks. Why would anyone ever want this? And they have it as the music, like, over all their ads. And it's so
the best.
Perfect. I'm like, now this is how you do it. Like, this is absolutely like taking the page and understanding what this is about,
That's
like,
right. That's right.
Hold the conversation, respond to the comments, kick back.
And look at all the disruption.
Absolutely. 100%.
From the old brand, like the old brands, I don't know. It just feels like this is a moment for them to say, wait, what worked in social media? Not the old thing.
Yeah.
Let's do it differently now.
That's right. And it's interesting when you take a brand like Liquid Death and you think about how powerful horror and gore is on Roblox, like what they have the potential to do just because of who they are as a brand. That's really cool. And where should that product show up? And like, how could you make it funny and interesting? Like,
are you going to be talking to them about Roblox? Are you going to be doing that?
I hadn't even thought about them. I'm like, oh, they should have it. Like, you guys gave me too many ideas. This is a problem. I'm like, okay, adding it to the list. That's a good one.
Jumping a little bit back into Roblox, the other thing that, of course, that they added is actually linear ad kind of scenarios now for brands to not necessarily go native, but just to put their ad in there. And, it's interactive in some ways, is that I guess you could portal jump through it. But how are you seeing that for your brands? What do you think it'll do for Roblox? Which brands do you think, this is good for?
Yeah. So I've been sort of, deep in thought on this big question of how do you reach the youth today? If you are a marketer and your job is to reach someone specifically under 13, how on earth are you getting in front of these people? One, YouTube, super restrictive. Not all kids are on YouTube. It's really tough you can't target them, right? So it's very challenging. They don't really watch linear TV anymore. How are you getting in front of this consumer? And so I think Roblox has a very unique opportunity to be answer to that. Now, they're going to have similar challenges with targeting and the privacy policies around that consumer. But I do really believe that feels like a smart play. If your job is to grow in that youth kid space, like, you got to be all over this. And so that's the segment of the sort of brand world that I am focused on helping shepherd in, specifically because I don't know where else they're targeting. I think they're in having a tough time. And you can see that reflected in global toy sales. Like, everything is down in this space. And I think this idea of merging digital and IRL play is really unique that Roblox can extend. And so, this to me is that's the segment. And then how do you make it cool and interesting? It always goes back to creative, right? Like, what's the creative? What's the hook? Is someone going to stand there and just watch a generic TV ad? No, like you can't, like the brands who want to recut the TV ad and shove it into these surfaces, it's like, come on, like, it's just, I'm sorry, guys. Like, it's just not the playbook, right? It's just not the playbook. So I do think there's going to be a whole new format. And what is the creative? And that is being built today. No one knows, right?
I mean,
Anyone
it's a Saturday morning, cartoon commercial interstitial, which was such a huge thing when I was a kid.
Huge.
Like that shaped my entire like shelf space, right? So what is that in the modern digital world? Because it is definitely not a commercial.
No, and 100%. Even just movie marketing, if you think about it, right? Like, there's all these amazing movies that are coming out. How are they getting in front of this consumer? So that feels like an enormous opportunity for Roblox specifically to be that, hey, we're going to help you, reach this customer. Let's introduce some of these characters into these worlds. Let's actually have them step out of the ad and participate in the world. And just think really creatively, right? To get in front of the customer. Otherwise, I have no idea how you reach them, honestly.
Yeah. Well, we've seen a lot of experimentation in UEFN, in Epic Games, UEFN platform, which is similar to Roblox. Newer, obviously, it's only been around for a little over a year. But back when Epic started testing some of these new ideas, J.J. Abrams came out and announced, or the premiere of the Star Wars movie Rogue One was done actually inside Fortnite. So cool. I think we're seeing a little bit of that. And one thing Eliza and I have been talking about a lot this week is, we're kind of obsessed with the topic of transmedia.
Okay.
And even if it's not going to be like, the TV show, the traditional TV show or the traditional film, there's just so many ways it seems to weave these mediums together. This week we were really excited to see, a couple things. First of all, Pharrell Williams is doing a documentary
as
a Lego movie.
Obsessed.
I mean, if you lined up my daughter, who's 12, and 10 of Serafina's friends and asked them, hey guys, do you want to go watch a documentary? They would be like,
hard no.
Absolutely not. You totally don't get it. Yeah. But now I bet you they will want to see this, right?
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
We were thinking, wait a second, the Lego has this investment in Epic, and the Lego engagement inside Fortnite is massive right now.
Massive.
There's an easy on-ramp. It feels like the melding of all these mediums could happen. Are you seeing that? It'd be great to get your
oh my gosh. The transmedia space is honestly one of the most fascinating things to me on earth, because if you're not in every touch point and every iteration, you just aren't going to win, right? There's just too much going on.
Thank you.
And it's just, you're just not. You're not. And so a big thesis of mine is every brand needs to learn how to become an entertainment brand and an entertainment company, because you now have to hit every touch point in the flywheel. Whereas before you could just run an ad and, do a couple celeb deals and call it a day. It just doesn't work like that anymore. And so it's interesting, like, the Lego thing, first of all, when I saw that, kind of circling back to the initial part of our conversation, it's interesting they're going to a creator to make that like an extension. So we all know, like, people buy from people trust people. This is an extension, and I think it's brilliant and spot on. But going to the transmedia piece, when I think about, we work in a flywheel model for our IP clients. So people who want to expand their own IP, they're sitting on it. Maybe it was a legacy channel. And the first place you start is in that sort of social relationship building, of course, because I've found a lot of these traditional IP clients, they only know their one media format. Typically, they're either really good at YouTube, or they're really good at traditional premium media, or maybe they're a gaming company, right? But they really typically are very good at one thing and one channel. But in order to scale, you have to activate the whole thing. So we will typically help them start on the social side, and that's across all social platforms. So sometimes maybe they have huge audiences on IG, they don't know how to do YouTube, there's a lot there to unpack. Then we move into collabs and partnerships. And I think that's where Lego is in their phase of like, okay, cool. Now let's get this into culture, right? Like they're already in culture, but just let's put this into culture to help think through that, the gaming element and the human side of it. Let's partner with Pharrell, who's like obviously the best possible person, the coolest story possible to tell. So like amazing. And then they're going to go into consumer products, right? Like what are the products that we need to make and sell as extensions of this? And of course, Lego is a consumer product business. So they're kind of starting there. That will be their core. And then the last bit is always in that sort of premium content, whether that is actually building a game or doing a show or a film. Then you have every touch point going and working. And it's just, that's how you build something extraordinary today. But trying to just stay in your lane. I actually work with a lot of YouTube creators who built massive followings. And the work isn't, hey, you found success here. You're amazing at this thing, but let's build you into a consumer brand, right? Like that's a very different thing than being a media business or an IP owner. Two different conversations. So I do think the transmedia piece is the connective glue to making that work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It makes a lot of sense. And when you're speaking to brands now, I mean, it seems like a lot for them to get their heads around. I know that, Eliza and I, and Keshav, when we're speaking to, game developers, because we really have more of a gaming lens and a blockchain lens. But when we're speaking to, they're already pretty forward thinking people if they're in these spaces. But it's still really hard for them to get their heads around Roblox. Like, where are brands right now in terms of thinking about this are they just in experimentation mode? Are they just thinking of this as kind of a cost center? Are they thinking, Michelle seems to know what she's doing. Let's bring her in. I would just love to hear, and also, hopefully some of them will be listening and will bring you in. But, where, like, how would you explain to a brand, like, this is building a brand, this is building a game, this is a cost center, this is experimentation. Just talk through how you would explain it.
Yeah. What a great question. So when I go in to sort of set the stage, I think we always need to start the conversation, I do, with the consumer, right? And where is the attention sitting? What does that look like? Who are these people? And I think what you'll find is that most brands actually have no idea how massive and just the amount of time that is being spent by this customer base. And so you have to start with the user behavior that exists today. And then what I'll often show is, well, how are they actually playing and experimenting in this space? And so sometimes you can phase brands in through really lightweight things. Let's start with skins, right? Let's start with product, which is what they understand, and translating product into UGC and, physical things that they can translate into digital things to buy. So think of it as the one-to-one, like we sell we make things and we sell things. We do that on Roblox. And a lot of brands have not done that yet. So that's kind of let's put our toe in the water there. Then when you think about the double click into, well, who's that consumer that you're trying to reach? And oftentimes I try to work, most of my clients are trying to reach Gen Z or Gen Alpha. Like I tend to kind of always focus on, that's just the customer that I know and love. And so we look at, okay, here are the surfaces that they're spending time on in your niche or in your area. So if you're a women's apparel brand, here are actually the games that are serving that consumer today on a daily basis, on a highly engaged way. Let's think about how we start to integrate you into this world as a test. So it always starts as a test or a phased approach. The challenge right now with Roblox is that, and they are building this, but early days in tracking, early days in attribution, you can't get super granular as to the targeting yet. I do know that will have to come because they're a public co and everybody has to ultimately build a massive ad business, but it's not there yet. And so it has to be really at the CPC, CPM level in terms of where people are comfortable spending. And that's typically how we'll get people in the game. I think where you get friction is, it's no different. And I keep saying this, it's no different from putting an out-of-home billboard out, putting a TV commercial, any IRL activation. Like, you don't get attribution from those things either. And so you just have to sort of understand who's playing this game at the very high level, and just know this is a cultural conversation that's happening that you need to be part of. And I think that typically is how you start. And over time, we'll build those things. I still see brands that don't have tracking and attribution for influencer and creator deals to this day. And that's a very much more mature business than Roblox, So there's some irony there, but the reality is if you want to be part of the conversation and you're not in XYZ games, you really aren't you don't exist to these people. That's the path that they're on. So I think that feels like the positioning. I also, another double click is that very few executives you'll find spend any time in Roblox at all. And so there's a ton of education happening. What are the cool games? What's popping? What's interesting? Why, horror as a topic. This is something I talk a lot about. Very few people are paying attention to that right now. Right. And so it is a ton of education, but that's fun. That's what building is. Right.
Mm-hmm. And are they existing are they the existing social media disruptor brands that
will get in?
Yeah. First, or will it be kind of the traditional luxury that might kind of give it another go?
Yeah. Oh my God. It's a great question. It's dependent on the leader. Okay. There is no,
whether they can see it.
Yep. And I hate saying that because nobody wants to hear that, but that's just the reality. It's who's willing to take a risk. Right? What type of leader are they? Are they willing to take a risk and a bet? Because it is that right now. And then what you did see, though, in the early days is a lot of people investing in building their own worlds. And that was that type of leader. So I would probably focus on the people who have already, made a bet to date, and then help them kind of okay, let's expand and make this really work. And I think that's what you're seeing Walmart trying to figure out right now. Lots of people will do the same. And I hope that there's appetite to think a little bit broader and bigger than we just need to own the land. And that's the play here. Because I really don't believe that long-term is the way to success here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And just one more question on AI. We can't do a podcast without touching on AI. How are brands, what kind of questions are they asking you about it? How do you think AI will unfold here? Is there a lot of fear? Are they embracing some of the new technologies?
And is gaming then somehow a better solution because it's not necessarily AI, but a cool creative that already exists. So
wow, that's it.
Lead.
Sorry,
I like
leading
that.
I won't lead the witness anymore. No.
I know. I like that. I like that.
My apologies.
Oh my gosh. AI.
We can't help ourselves.
I
know.
No.
I love it. You're so gaming. I love it.
Yeah.
So there's three kind of buckets with AI that I'm seeing, and I am championing personally. The first, and not sexy probably to your audience, but I think mission critical, is in the operations and unsexy parts of running and digital business. And so I am seeing, and we did this even back at Turn-In. We started helping our portcos, get in this game. But when you think about what humans are doing that likely isn't something that's super valuable long-term for them to do, there's a lot of unsexy parts of operating e-commerce, e.g. writing PDP copy, looking at the different assets you have for your actual product photography, to SEO and SEO arbitrage. There's lots of stuff that could be done with AI now that humans were manually doing. So there's the operation side. The cooler part that I've been championing, which I'm very excited about, is kind of going back to that every brand needs to be an entertainment company and an entertainment business. If you have a brand, you have IP, right? You stand for something, you've built a message. And I do believe we're going to move into this world where AI will enable storytelling of that brand by your own consumers, unlike anything we've seen. And so if you're sitting on a brand that has a hook or an angle or a positioning, using AI to help your customers tell stories with your brand feels like we're about to see a proliferation of this. And let's just use Lego as an example because we're on it. Lego has IP, right? They are an IP company, but they sort of have always controlled that narrative, right? It's their movie. The Pharrell movie was created by them. The Fortnite thing, right? It's sort of, they are the owners of the IP. What happens next is if AI is enabled for me to tell my Lego story, right? Like my daughter to tell her Lego story. What content might she make? What stories might she make? Where does that live, right? And so I think that feels like the next wave of, to me, like where I would be taking AI, if I'm an IP company, is open it up. Think like fan fiction on steroids, basically, right? But put in the guardrails because we know people are nuts and like, whatever, anyone's going to do anything with your IP. But let them play with your IP, and AI enables that. And I genuinely think that's going to be such an unlock for those guys. And then I think when you talk about the gaming being a safe haven, yeah, if the guardrails aren't there, that's really, really scary and high risk for a brand because that's all they are, right? At the end of the day, they are a brand. They have to protect that at all costs. But you think about this tension we have. And I think why gaming is even so popular, it allows you to participate, right? It allows you to tell your story and create new stories. The game developer just built the surface, the canvas for you to do that, right? And so I kind of feel like AI might enable that on maybe traditional mediums, or I don't know, even new, but it just feels like that is where it becomes cool, right? It's like how we go full circle for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, where they can now tell the story and participate with your IP, whereas you used to control that narrative. Now they get to do that. So I don't know. That's the stuff that I get very excited about because I think it's so inspiring to think what people might create with that.
I couldn't agree with you more. Actually, I think, yeah. Love it.
I love these conversations, Michelle. Yeah. I just want to continue to have more and more of them. So we're going to figure out how we're going to work together.
Yay. Amazing. Always. I love big thinkers.
Yes. And we're going to get you back on the show so that we can continue in your journey or we can continue to follow your journey. And, in the meantime, can you let our listeners know where to find you? And,
absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your site or your company, your Instagram. Where in socials?
Where am I on the internet? So my site is greatestofalldigital.com, and that is an acronym for my last name, Goad. And I did not come up with that. It was a colleague at Nike who called me that. I was like, that's really good. Actually, I'm gonna take that. That's amazing. I'm taking that with me. And so that's our site. And then you can find me. I do a lot of writing on LinkedIn. At just Michelle Goad. I write occasionally on X, Michelle Goad. And I have a newsletter. We do have a newsletter with the business, so you can sign up for that on our site. So that's where we exist. And yeah, we love to help both sides of the table, right? Obviously, coming from the brand world, we understand how they think, but my own startup was essentially a creator. So I understand the pain of doing those deals and speaking the language, right? Which is the hard part, because it can be challenging, right? You're in your own bubble, whether you realize it or not. And not everybody is able to stay, up to date on that. And so I feel like sitting in that middle ground where we can broker both sides is really where our sweet spot is.
Yeah, you really lived in, startup world and corporate world and big brand world. And so and then obviously in addition to the fact that you are thinking about things that are so far ahead. So anyway, thank you so much for coming onto the show, Michelle. And we look forward to having you back sometime soon.
Thank you. Speak soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Michelle. Bye.